I probably told you this story before. So I was walking down the steps with my New York bomber jacket on, ready to go out into the fall weather. And the press agent, Shirley Hurd, said to me, "Bill, this is Mrs. Peck." Now, I don't know any Mrs. Peck. I wasn't expecting any Mrs. Peck. I didn't know of any Mrs. Peck. But somehow I knew what was coming. I shook Mrs. Peck's lovely gloved hand, and then with bated breath, I waited for Shirley Hurd's next sentence. "And this is Mrs. Peck's husband, Gregory." My knees went weak. I shook his hand, heard that deep kind of hollow, very kind voice, but I knew I had to sit down really, really quickly. Atticus from To Kill a Mockingbird was shaking my hand. And so kind, so humble. I remember every word he said to me, but I knew I couldn't stand up. Finally, the press secretary said to me, "Bill, would you like to join us for some libation next door?" And I said to her as politely as I could, "No, thank you." They were so nice to invite me to go. I'm just a journeyman, a journey person, to go with them, but I knew enough about myself to know that I wanted to protect my memories and my image of Mr. Peck, of Mr. Gregory Peck. I wanted to remember him larger than life. I didn't want to talk to him. I wanted to remember him the way he was in the movies. I did not want to know anything about his humanity. Oh, how the disciples were enthralled with Jesus. They didn't understand him, and sometimes they were afraid of him, but they were really taken by him. For nearly a millennium, for nearly 1,000 years, a conquering Messiah had been prophesied and promised to the Jewish people. Isaiah 9:6, written 700 years before Christ, prophesies that, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful," which means literally miracle. It means Counselor, the mighty God, the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Micah 5:2 predicts, "But thou, Bethlehem, out of thee shall come forth unto me that who is to be ruler in Israel." Many had come before Jesus saying, "I am the Messiah. Look what I can do." But Jesus came and was like none other. Jesus saying that I have not come to abolish the law but to fulfill it. Jesus saying that I will turn mother against daughter and father against son. Jesus fit the prophecy. Jesus felt like at last the real deal. Yes, this was finally the Messiah Israel had hoped for. One that would turn the wayward nation on its ear, get things rolling again, get everyone back on course with God. And these young men and women, these disciples, flocked to him. How could this not finally be the Messiah? Jesus was the success like they had never seen before. Jesus was their future. As his word and his way became more well known, the disciples figured they were set for life. Judas Iscariot, who was the keeper of the company purse, can't you just imagine what he thought? When Jesus goes global, I will be rich, rich beyond my wildest dreams. Because the disciples reasoned, if Jesus could perform these miracles, having power over death itself, when the time was right, he would surely conquer the Romans just like that. Seeking approval and affirmation is not a new phenomenon. But Jesus, being Jesus, was using the media check-in piece. You know, well, enough about me, so now what do you think about me? To teach the central lesson of relationship with him. Faithfulness to him. Jesus called together and asked those disciples who idolized him, "Hey Peter, hey Andrew, hey James and John, hey Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, Simon, Thaddeus, and Judas Iscariot, who do people say that I am?" Jesus was at the height of his popularity and his powers, and the disciples had the pulse of the people. You heard what Joan read in our presence. They answered, well, Jesus, some say John the Baptist, come back to life. Some say Elijah, come back to life. And still others say the prophets like Isaiah or Amos or Jeremiah, come back. And then perhaps Jesus' eyes narrowed a bit, and maybe a tear or two rolled out of them as he stared at them more intently and he asked them, but who do you say that I am? Simon spoke up and gave the A-plus answer. You are the Messiah. And in this Markan account of the gospel, Jesus answered, you are absolutely correct. But in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus doesn't say, and upon this rock I will build my church. He doesn't say that. What he says is this, you are right, now don't tell anybody. Why? Why would the evangelist Mark report Jesus saying such a thing? Such a mysterious thing. Perhaps it was because Jesus knew that although Simon Peter had the right answer, Simon Peter did not necessarily have the correct answer. Perhaps Simon did not truly understand what being the Messiah meant. And then this Jesus, this leader, this hero in which the disciples had invested so much stock, so much belief, so much of their life, began to tell them, I must undergo tremendous suffering. I must be rejected by the priests and the scribes, and worst of all, I must be killed. But I will rise again in 3 days. Mark says Jesus said this quite openly, quite frankly. It was not a parable. Or was it? His faith seemed easy enough to understand from what he said. But it certainly ranks as a parable because Simon could not believe what he heard. The scripture reports Simon took Jesus aside and let Jesus have it. Jesus might have said, as Simon said, look, I have followed you with blind devotion, even when I didn't understand, because I knew there was going to be a big payoff for me, for all of Israel at the end of this. Jesus, you are out of order here. This doesn't fit the prophecy. You are a conquering Messiah. You can't die. You are the restorer of life. What is going to happen to all of us if you die? What is going to happen to me? You're not sticking to the plan here, Jesus. You're not sticking to prophecy here, for which we have so long waited. Simon was shaping the concept of Messiah according to his own ideas. He was like me with Gregory Peck. He did not want to hear anything about Jesus' humanity. He did not want to hear anything about Jesus' human process. And you know what Jesus responded to Peter in front of the other disciples. Get behind me, Satan. You are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. Jesus then laid it out. These miracles that I do and these teachings that I tell you, this new way leads up to one conclusion. The old order is passing away. It, like me, will have to die. If you want to save your life, if you want to save the life of your people, of this nation, if you by faith want to go where God is going, to be in a relationship with God and have a life after this existence, you have to be willing to put your life on the line and follow me through death. As we overhear these 2,000-year-old sacred conversations, what do they say to us in the 21st century? Faith in Jesus means having faith in the plan, the very nature of creation. Yes, the sun rises and sets. Yes, even though it is very, very green in Ohio, the seasons change. Yes, the trees shed their leaves and then they get new ones. Yes, the birds migrate. The fish swim to places where they spawn. And you and I are an active part of all that process. We are always in that process. We are in that process, part of that process. Whether you are the longest reigning monarch on the British throne or trying to figure out what to do about termites that are going crazy during this hot September weather, it is ultimately not about you winning. It is about taking yourself out of the center. Stop looking for a Messiah that you can place your fortunes on who will win. The Messiah who will conquer all the nations, will conquer all of your foes on your behalf. Christ did not come to be that Messiah. Christ did not come to be that personage, to fit that model, to save you at the expense of somebody else. Christ did not live so that you would not have to die. Christ lived because death doesn't have the last word. Loved us. Christ came so that your life in this existence would be more abundant, not permanent. Christ came so that you would find an outrageous way of sharing and proclaiming this wonderful time that you have, that we all have, as your spiritual being passes through this mortal existence, going on to be at home with Him. That home that we can only imagine, that has been prepared not by human hand. Christ calls us to go on with Him by faith, not to the miracles, but to the lessons toward which they point. That is what Christ calls us to be faithful to. I was just a teenager when I shook hands with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I shook his hand, and I was amazed how small that hand was. I was amazed how small he was. And he seemed so tiny, and he seemed so sad. But as a young black man, he was my hero. How could that not be? I didn't understand everything that he said. I was afraid of some of the things that he said, but I saw in him a way out for all people of color. Integration, dignity. For me, he was cast in the mold of Jesus as was no other. How I felt as the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover began to release facts about King's personal life. He was a man just like any other man. He had made mistakes. I felt like Simon, I didn't know who this man was. I felt like I had to get to know him over again. But oh, as I matured, I realized it was not to King the man that my allegiance would lie. It was to this great wounded warrior's journey and his teachings. This man who had studied world religions and used them all in a way to point to the way of Christ. Christ calls us to understand that the only thing worth living your life for is to love and respect all of our sister and brother humans for the good of all creation. It is that to which Christ calls us to be